What's up, everyone? I'm Never a Dull Moment, and this one's probably gonna get some hate. So, why would somebody make a video like this? I mean, PC gaming is fantastic. It teaches people about computers, it allows you to customize everything. The audacity, the gall. I'm not just some console-loving, PC-hating guy that just doesn't like PC gaming. In fact, I'm not actually trying to convince you not to build or buy a gaming PC. But after building several of my own computers, as well as helping friends with part lists and building their own systems, I feel that it's necessary to bring up a few things that you might not be aware of when it comes to getting into PC gaming. The last thing I want is for people to go, hey, I really want to get into PC gaming, and then start trying to get moving, and then they go, oh crap, I have to do like 5 hours of stuff before I get moving. With all that in mind, I'm going to go through a couple of key points that a lot of people don't think about when they're getting into PC gaming. All right, analysis paralysis. One of the things that people run into when building their own computer is that there are so many options. I mean, you can quite literally build anything from a tiny little computer that's going to destroy any game and without breaking a sweat. You can make some RGB vomit epileptic machine that's just going to light up your entire room and flicker all the time. Or you could make something that's kind of understated, maybe more balanced, nothing too crazy, but it suits your needs. You can guess which side I'm on for that. So yeah, it's fair to say that there's a lot of options when you're building a computer. Now, one way that the community has tried to mitigate this is by creating build guides. A lot of the times you'll see popular YouTubers create videos that say, hey, you got 500 bucks, here's what I recommend building. You got 700, 1,000, whatever. And they'll just tell you exactly which parts you can buy, and that's exactly what my brother did when he built his computer. Just went, all right, that looks good, happy with the performance, I'll just buy all that stuff and throw it together. The problem with that approach is that those kinds of videos can get outdated pretty quickly. Technology in general moves really fast, but when you're talking about individual components and parts, it moves really, really fast. And in fact, you could watch a video that came out maybe 2-3 months ago and go, okay, well, this looks like a really good system. You might see videos now that go like, wait, the new Ryzen 5000 looks really good. I would wait on building a computer. The new Radeon 6000 series looks really interesting. Let's wait to see what that looks like. And before you know it, it's like, what do I do? What do I do? There's so many options. So it can be kind of overwhelming, and if you don't know what you're looking for, that could be kind of crazy. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I could offer about this is to take into account who you're watching videos from. There are some videos that maybe don't give you the best idea about how you should be putting together a computer. I mean, I'm not gonna name anyone, but you know, there are some not great videos out there. A common phrase that people like to say in the community is that it's never the right time to buy. No matter what you do, you'll buy something, and then maybe if it's 6 months or 2 months or 3 months or a year, something else is gonna come out that was like the same price or cheaper and has better performance. That's gonna happen pretty much regardless of what you do. You're never gonna get something that's gonna hold up super well over the next several years and have super awesome performance for that whole time. And that's part of why building a computer is good. It's because you can just swap out stuff when it becomes outdated as opposed to buying a whole new system. Boy, PC gaming is just such a better value. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do with a PC that you can't do on a console, and like, it costs about the same if you want to have a good system. So like, why would anyone ever buy a console? Well, it's not actually that true. Let's get into it. So you can build a PC for the same price as a PS4 Slim if you really want to. And there is a lot of controversy around saying something like a PS4 Slim will perform better than a $300 PC. I mean, it's pretty true as of right now, but it's still controversial. But that's not specifically what I want to talk about. I mean, what you actually want and the frame rates that you want could totally vary from person to person. Plus, some people are willing to spend like $2,000 on a computer that will destroy a console. So we're not really going to focus on that point. But what I want to talk about more is hidden costs. Like this stuff. I think it's a fair point to mention that if you're gaming on a console, you probably already have a decent 4K TV nowadays, maybe something like a soundbar or a decent sound system, and you also get a controller that comes with it that works really well. And when you build a PC, you probably don't have that stuff already. So some other stuff that you probably want to consider when you're building your PC is something like a decent monitor that supports more than 60 hertz, a keyboard that's going to be comfortable to use for a few hours, a mouse that is not necessarily gaming focused, but usually kind of gaming focused because those are kind of where the better ones are. And also something like a gaming headset. Usually this is just the easiest option because it has a mic built in. You usually get pretty decent sound and you can hear where people are, especially if you're playing something like an FPS game where you need to know where to shoot and that kind of stuff. So you're probably going to end up buying all this stuff one way or another. If you're like me and you're cheap, you might end up just using some old stuff, but you'll eventually end up kind of having a setup that looks like this. So I've thrown together a list of some recommended parts, which I would say are a pretty safe option that are going to grow with your system if you want to upgrade stuff later on. And those are going to be all over here. The amount that all of these things cost together was about $324. Prices are a little bit volatile right now because of everything that's going on, and stock is kind of tricky, but I would recommend budgeting around this much money if you're looking to get decent peripherals to game on. If you're looking at doing something like building a $1,000 PC and then throwing it on your old family Dell monitor, you can get 240 FPS all day in every game, but if you're looking at that on a 60 hertz panel, that's not going to be too great. Also, if you're gaming on an old crusty keyboard, you're probably going to get pretty tired of that pretty fast, and if you're using a mouse that just sort of sucks and isn't comfortable to use, that's probably not going to be any good either. So just make sure that you consider these costs when you're building a system. You just don't want to end up in the kind of scenario where you save up for 10 years for a Lamborghini, and then you realize that you can't afford the insurance or the gas to actually drive it. So just think ahead before you do this kind of thing. Something that I don't think that people talk about enough when it comes to building your own PC is the process of actually going from a bunch of boxes with parts in them to a fully working PC that you can play games on. And I can say this from experience because when I was 16 in high school and I built my first PC, I was like, hey guys, I got all the stuff. I'm gonna build my PC today and then we can play Counter-Strike tonight. And yeah, I did not end up being able to play that day because it took a while to actually get everything up and running. So I would say that it's reasonable to assume if you've never built a computer before, if you haven't worked on a computer before, it could take you around about 2 hours to get the system completely built and make sure that everything's working and all that stuff. And I would recommend taking your time. There's nothing worse than trying to throw your system together really quickly only to realize that maybe you shorted something out, you didn't connect something properly, or you have to undo some of the work you did because you went a little bit too fast. It can be really frustrating if you try and speed through it. So I would allow yourself at least 2 hours to get the computer built if you don't have experience with this kind of thing. Now, once the computer is fully built, that doesn't mean that you're done, but you're going to need to have some kind of a USB flash drive or even a disk if you still use disks. I mean, you shouldn't use a disk, but yeah, so flash drive. You have a Windows flash drive that you're gonna have to plug into your computer, get that installed, get everything up and running. And that doesn't take all that long, but you're probably going to want to do some stuff like sign into your Gmail account. You're probably going to want to take Microsoft Edge off as your default browser because, like, yikes. You're probably also going to want to just install some apps. These could be anything from drivers for your graphics card and motherboard and all that sort of stuff. And even just little things like RGB and making sure that your monitor is running at the right refresh rate. And I would say that that could safely take up to another 1 to 2 hours, depending on how well you know what you're doing. Now, to be clear, none of this stuff is all that difficult to do, but if you think that you're gonna go from a box of computer parts to a fully working computer in an hour, I'm just telling you that you should manage your expectations. So if you're in a rush, then maybe you should just get a pre-built, right? See, you shouldn't buy a pre-built computer because if you do, you're kind of a loser. So the PC gaming world tends to be kind of elitist about buying pre-builts. And honestly, I don't really care. I don't know. I guess there's some like complex that people have when they build their own thing, but I'm not going to talk about that today. The fact of the matter is that when you buy a pre-built, you do spend more money and you get a little less performance because you're paying someone else to assemble your system. But the target market doesn't usually care about the performance that they're missing, and I'm not here to try and convince you not to buy a pre-built computer. But unfortunately, the conversation doesn't end there. Now, I'm not going to get into this super in-depth because Gamers Nexus has covered this very much at length, and I will never be able to hold a candle to the amount of research and hands-on experience he's done with pre-built systems. But there are some pre-builts out there that are really bad. Like, legitimately, you can buy them and think that everything's going to work, and it's like, oh, this isn't connected properly. Now I have to basically go through and figure out why my computer isn't turning on. Oh, wait, Windows isn't actually configured properly. Hold on, this isn't working. What's going on? Does anyone else have this issue? Then you're on the phone with customer support, and worst case scenario, you might end up having to ship that computer back and have them ship you another one, and then you're out like a week. Now, there are some pretty good pre-built manufacturers out there. My understanding is that there have been some missteps that companies have made. I would avoid buying Walmart's overpowered PCs because they are like the epitome of not putting a system together right. Like, if you were to pay somebody to build you a computer, I would fire them if they built something like that. But you do want to do your research and make sure that you're buying from a company that knows what they're doing and isn't going to send you a system that doesn't work or be really, really rude when you have a problem with the pre-built system and they don't really do anything to fix it. Okay, with all that said, I think we've covered a lot of the big roadblocks that people run into when they're looking at getting into PC gaming. As I said in the beginning, none of this was me trying to convince you not to get into PC gaming. But what I do want to do is give you an idea of what the actual experience is like and some things that you might run into that might cause frustration. Fortunately, the PC gaming community is pretty involved. If you run into a problem, there's a good chance that you'll be able to find someone that can figure it out for you. And it is a really good skill to generally know how computers work and some basic troubleshooting if things aren't working. Now, I am planning on making a video in the future that is going to be counterpoints to everything I brought up today and why you should get into PC gaming. So if you found this video interesting and you want to see the next one, I recommend giving me a subscribe and hitting the bell icon. With all that said, I'm never a dull moment. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna go play some video games. Wait a second, this is Linux.